My name is Steve Hutchinson. I am honored to be here with all of you. First of all, I'd like to thank Johnny Linton, wherever Johnny is, for doing this wonderful program. Yeah, and I'd also like to thank everyone who participated in helping Johnny put this together. It's been a marvelous, wonderful affair, and well-deserved. And thank you, Johnny, and thank everyone else. I am one of Peach Boswell's bad boys in the 6th grade. And I'm going to get even with her when I see her. But my Aunt Henrietta Allen and Uncle Steve Allen founded the school in 1952. And if she knew that I was a past chairman of the board, she'd probably roll over in her grave. She was an inspiration, no doubt about it. And I am so happy that we have Glenn Calishaw as headmaster now. Glenn, where are you, Glenn?
Right here, Steve.
There you are. Glenn, thank you so much for the wonderful job that you and your staff have done. Pinewood has been taken to a new horizon, and it's just wonderful. I get the biggest charge when I go out to the school and see what all new building is going on and the achievements that the students have done is remarkable, and thank you so much. One of the things, my sister, who grew up living next door to Jed, couldn't come down. She caught a flu bug, but I asked her, told her about what was going on tonight, and asked if she had any memories. And one thing that she remembered was that your mother also had, and Annabelle, you may remember this, a Miss Manor school.
Yes,
teach the
of course
young ladies in high school
I forgot to mention that today. The little girls loved it.
Then that personified Fran. It really did. I am supposed to be the MC, and I'm not much of an MC, I'm not much of a speaker, but we were honored today to have Senator Warner down. And it was really a privilege to have someone of that stature come down and participate in what's going on at Pinewood. And again, Johnny, you have taken Pinewood, as with all the help you have with Glenn and the staff, to levels that my aunt and uncle would be so proud of. It's just unimaginable what's been achieved at the school, and I'm forever grateful and proud to be a participant and proud to have been a former board member. Well, I want to introduce Admiral Flatley to make some remarks. And don't touch the button. It's my privilege.
Probably don't need it.
I'll give it to you when you.
Good evening, Jim Flatley, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you. And probably one of the neatest things that went on this evening over at Pinewood was listening, and pardon me for my informality, but listening to Peach and Annabelle.
The oldies.
How are we doing?
Oh, we need that, do we? I saw a political cartoon a couple days ago, and think of old G.I. Joe in the foxhole back in World War II. It was a takeoff on that, but it showed one of our servicemen in a foxhole in the hot spot right now, and he's yelling, "What happened to the military exclusion clause?" And there's this little person with lipstick on in the foxhole beside him saying, "Shut up and shoot." And I can't think of a more apt description of Fran. God bless Fran and Annabelle and Peach, my mother, contemporaries. My dad was a World War II guy. And everybody back in that generation just did their job, got it done to the benefit of all the rest of us and those that follow in our footsteps, and our kids and our grandkids. And they came home and went back to work and built America. And we're the result of that. I asked for this walk around mic because I wanted to pass around the room this evening, and I want to hear some more about Fran on top of what Peach and Annabelle and others told us this afternoon.
Bring it over this way.
All right, thank you.
A few years ago, Annabelle was selected to go to a church weekend, a church retreat weekend. She had no idea what she was going to experience there, but Fran had been to that same weekend several years before. And when Fran found out that Annabelle was going, Fran showed up to decorate all of the placemats, draw all of the greeting cards, and wouldn't let any of the rest of us who were trying to make sure that Annabelle had a good weekend, she wouldn't let us do anything but the best.
I'm Mike from St. Paul's, and I saw Fran almost every Thursday when I was the celebrant at our Thursday morning service. And if the other clergy were there, they saw her every Thursday. And that's a real special service for us. There are only about 8 to 12 folks that come for that. It's a healing service. And one of my memories of Fran is always coming up to the rail for healing. And it's for you or for others, and always prayers for her son, Jed. And always lifting him up and saying, I want to pray for Jed. He works so hard, and I care so much for him. It was before Troy died, her daughter, for both of them. In the last many years, simply Jed, but just a heart full of passionate love for her 2 children.
I couldn't share this on the stage but most of you all know who Dr. Burks Sr. is, don't you? He established the Rehabilitation Center. It's known all over the country for what he's done for retarded children. Well, his first assignment as a young officer in the Navy, the waves had just been established, and he said all of the rest of his people went to someplace and got killed, but he didn't finish up as fast as the rest of them. And he was assigned to train the new wave officers. And he said it was just awful. They all came out of, most of them, Ivy League and fine schools all over the country. And the uniforms didn't fit, and he has some wonderful pictures. And he wanted to talk to Fran about this. He didn't know whether she had been in his training cadre. And he said, you know something? I'm not sure she was in the Navy. She wouldn't say a word to me. That was her secrecy.
When Senator Warren went down to meet the family, Jed said, you know, my mother would be impressed that a U.S. Senator was here, but she would be most impressed that the Secretary of the Navy was here. And I think that says a lot about the lady. So she wasn't easily impressed, but folks that serve in the military and folks that make a difference in this country were special to your mother.
I get to come up here and make a couple words. I'm kind of at the bottom of the food chain when I see the people that have preceded me. So I feel a little humbled by following up with Jim Flatley, who has more carrier landings than any other pilot in the world. And so I'm humbled and thank you for the opportunity to speak. You know, when this thing started was as a result of 9/11. And Johnny, typical Johnny's always thinking somewhere between midnight and 4 in the morning, as best I can tell in the emails that I get from Johnny. So, because I never get an email at noon. I get it at 4 in the morning or 2 in the morning, something like that. So Johnny Linton started thinking after that. And the theme of his thought process was basically that the liberty of the United States was threatened. And not only the liberty of the United States, but the liberty of the world if you really look through and unpack what's happening in the world. And as he thought about that, he concluded, and probably rightly so, that most of the youth today really don't understand the relationship, the equation between liberty and the cost of that liberty. Those 3,000 people in the World Trade Center certainly understand the cost of that and their families. But by the time it gets to the ground out in Summerville, South Carolina, or sometimes in Charleston, Low Country, in general, the youth really don't understand it. I'm not sure some of us older ones that have never been in the battle like Jim Flatley's been really understand it. So from that thought process, that seed at 2 in the morning, I suppose, Johnny began to think about that. And you saw the result of that in the hall, Freedom Hall, which was the first step of the murals along that wall and the selection through the roads committee, etc., of those people, quite a remarkable event. And it moved on to essays and school and education and became a broader program and got to the point of Liberty Gardens, which started an idea a couple of years ago, which culminated today. So I just can't tell you how proud I am to be a part of this. And if you look at the liberty that has transpired over the years, and you can go to Bosnia, and you can go to Palestine, and you can go to all the countries around the world, in Africa, and also here in the United States, where liberties weren't given to all people of our nation. And those things needed to change, and that sometimes kind of undefined thing called liberty, that freedom, that peace, that people really have an enormous amount of cost that they've gone in to get it. So today, you've seen what's going on, and today you have the opportunity to see some of the sculptures that we're trying to purchase, and I get the opportunity to ask for the for the sale. You'll find brochures around.
The money man.
Yeah, the money man. So you'll find brochures around, and we've already gotten several pieces of sculpture to go in the garden. Ray and Elaine Murray have been so generous to say they'll buy a piece to go in the garden. The school is involved in raising money for that. So I just ask you to look in the brochures that are on the table here and out in front, and if you can find a way, or get 2 or 3 people together to put that together in order to purchase more sculpture to go in the gardens, which is really intended for the whole community, and tie that together, we would appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was a short applause, wasn't it? Well, let's give him a big applause. Hey, George! You give me the job, and I give no applause. Hey, George!
I'm going to say one thing. Well, I'm going to say a couple of things.
Yeah, he kept that off. You'll go away now.
No, you stand right here. As the former chairman of the board, the 3 proudest things that I would like to tell everyone is that, 1, got George Miller involved and eventually became chairman of the board. 2, we hired Glenn Cowshaw, and 3, we hired Bill Walker to spearhead our development. And you can see it has taken off to greatly. Jed, it's my privilege to have you come up and say a few words. And you're a great fellow, a good friend. I'm going to give you a hug. Okay.
I did say that to Senator Warner. It's a good thing you were the Secretary of the Navy, because Mom wouldn't have liked a politician. And he loved it. He thought it was great. I'd like you all to indulge me a little bit and let me talk to you a little bit about Mom and what she was all about and what she did. But before I do that, let me introduce my family, if y'all haven't met them. Back in the back over there is my daughter, Megan Suddeth, who 2 weeks from now is going to be married. In Columbia, South Carolina. Next to her is my son, Jetty Suddeth, who is an attorney at Haynesworth, Sinclair Boyd, and his lovely wife, Jessica, who are the parents of those 2 little children today that cut the ribbon, one of which had to be taken into the back of the room there. But the other one, I think, had an absolute ball. And what I'd like to do is kind of tell you there are 3 attributes I think Mom had. And I know she's looking down from above, and she is just absolutely thrilled that she is going to have a legacy in teaching children the cost of freedom and how to maintain freedom and the value of freedom and what needs to be done. She was very adventurous. I don't know if anybody knew that, but she was a very adventurous lady. Also, she had I would call it a very quiet tenaciousness. She was, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then her 3rd characteristic was this graciousness she had. She was an extremely gracious lady all the time. As far as her adventuresome spirit, I remember Henrietta Allen told me one time, Stevie's aunt, when we were at Pinewood, she said, "Jed, I know how to get you to do something." And I said, "What's that?" "That's tell you can't do it." And I got that from my mother, but you can see it back in the late 30s, at the middle of the late 30s, there she was in pre-med, wanting to go to Johns Hopkins Medical School when she got out of Goucher. She was obviously sidetracked into the code breaking business, all right, and joining the Navy, which was something, you know, those two activities for women in the 30s, that just wasn't what they did, okay? But somebody probably told her, you can't do that, probably her brother, and I'll get to her brother in a minute. It's kind of an interesting story. But she was always ready to go somewhere, to learn something. I remember my stepfather and my mother were headed to South America, and they were hijacked. And ended up in Cuba. All right, of course, my mother, she never really was upset about that. She was a little nervous, but she never really was frightened. I mean, she was kind of fascinated with this whole operation. Carl, on the other hand, was pulling his Naval Academy ring off, putting his ID cards in his shoes, and doing everything he can so nobody would know who he was or where he came from. And they, after the hijacking, they turned around and came back to Miami. Were debriefed by the FBI. They got on the next plane, went down to South America, and went into the Amazon somewhere. Okay, and just had a good time down there. You know, you have to ask yourself, how did this occur? Where did this adventuresome spirit come from? And the only thing I can figure, it came from probably her parents. And her father was Norwegian, and she came from a dedicated seafaring family. Her mother was British, all right, the island nation. Her father's father was the master of a bark that sailed from Norway to the east coast of the United States all the time, delivering whatever is in the Norwegian merchant marine. Her brother, Egil, really his name was Pete, they call him Egil, I'm not quite sure why, was a 1939 graduate of the Naval Academy. All right, I'll tell you an interesting story about that. When he came back from the Naval Academy, well, when he was getting ready to graduate and get his Naval Academy ring, he came home and told his mother that he was going to get the family crest put on the ring. He said, that's great. She thought he was going to get the Thornton crest put on his ring. He didn't. He came home, and he had his Naval Academy ring on with his little black onyx in the middle of it, and had a skull and crossbones on it, which was indicative of the Norwegian side of the family where we had the pirates. Okay, went back to Hager, the horrible Vikings, and all those things like that. So he was quite a character. He's 90 years old today, 91 years old. Unfortunately, he has Alzheimer's. I wish he could be here because he would have really loved this. And this particular event. She loved her country, and she loved the Navy. I remember, who was it? Annabelle was talking about after my father was killed, there were a number of suitors that showed up on the doorstep. And there was a Air Force colonel, Air Force colonel. And there were a couple of doctors, MDs, all right? And then there was Carl, all right, who was a Navy submariner. And there was no doubt in my mind that everybody's going to lose at the Navy game.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Every time we go to Stevie's house and watch the Army-Navy game with our mother. You know, every time she heard Anchors Aweigh, even in her later years when she had a very soft voice, every time she heard Anchors Aweigh, the next thing out of her mouth was beat Army. Every time, she just loved the Navy. And so I'm sure, with this adventuresome spirit of hers, that she would want those children, the kids at Pinewood School, to explore the world, you know, take hold of the adventure and solidify their understanding of why we are a free people and what the cost is and what we need to do in the future. This quiet tenacity she had was a very interesting trait, but she was also very competitive, and she was extremely independent. Matter of fact, she trained Toy and I, or brought us up to be extremely independent children. Sometimes that was good, sometimes that was bad, all right? But I think in the end, all right, we gained a whole lot from that. She was, you know, she passed away at age 86, just still full of life. She would ask me to take her down to Charleston stage and see the productions that they put on, go to the Gibbs. Matter of fact, 3 weeks before she died, we went to this sculpture show down at the Gibbs with some French guy that did the Thinker. Who was that, Rodin? Okay, right. And she just, you know, she just loved that type of stuff. They talk about independence. She had a bad habit. She came home one day and she was complaining that the banks were making the stalls to get into the, and you know, to get to the drive-through window too small. And she couldn't get her car through it. I said, okay, well, she removed several rear view mirrors from the car. And so I took the car down to get it repaired, and they said it'd take about 2 days. And I said, Mom, you going with a rental car? She said, nope. I said, okay. Well, it took about 4 days, and she was in the house for 4 days, and she really got a little antsy. So one day, she decided that she'd just leave and walk down to Garen's. She wanted to go to Garen's for something, so she did. She left the tea farm and walked to Garen's. For me, that's about a 35-minute trek, you know, doing pretty fast. And she walked down there. Poor old Dr. Dunning, I believe, was down there. He drove her back. She was extremely into. She didn't want to bother anybody. Okay, so that's what she did, and she was always ready for a good party. I remember growing up that's all that they had, a lot of parties. She was always ready for a good party. I remember somebody told me about 6 months ago when she was in one of those classes where you train ladies how to be ladies, etiquette classes. Somebody asked her how she got ready for a cocktail party. She said, "That's easy. I just get ready to model and put a drink in my hand." And that's how she. And it was just really appropriate. I mean, later on, she'd walk around and she was very sociable, talking to people, and she had a bad habit of letting her drink kind of tilt a little bit. She soaked several rugs. The other thing that I think it's you know, about this quiet tenacity, Mom experienced a lot of adversity in her life. You know, my father was killed in 1960 by lightning on a golf course. He was about 9 years older than Mom. She married Carl, who was about 8 years younger than she was. All right, and she said, "I'm not going through that again." So she got a younger guy. And then he died in 1993 with cancer, lung cancer. And then my sister died in 1997. So there's 3 people she loved dearly that passed away. And I can only say that the only thing that I can imagine in this world that gave her the strength to move forward was God. All right, and the strength of Mike Lumpkin and St. Paul's Episcopal Church. But I could tell when she was ready to go again, because whenever she went into mourning or grieving, she couldn't do her art. But 6 to 8 months later, she would start looking for commissions to do art. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks before she died, she said, "I think I need a new commission." I said, "Well, where are you going to get one, Mom?" She said, "I'm going to walk down the street and see if somebody wants me to draw their house." I said, "Okay." So she struck off to see if that would happen. Every day during all this adversity, she'd wake up. She would get decked out as if impeccably dressed, impeccably groomed, and explore that day. And it didn't make a whole lot of difference if she was going to go pick up sticks on the front yard, or was going to go to a luncheon at the Gibbs, or whatever it was. But she was always ready and always in control and very, very positive. I believe, she truly believed that she could control her mind. She believed that whatever she believed in would happen, and she made things happen that way. I'll tell you on the competitiveness side, I'll tell you one funny story. Her brother, who she called a smart cookie, who went to the Naval Academy, the thing she was most proud of as far as Pete was concerned, her Eagle, is that she got a higher grade in physics in high school than he did. All right, and she was extreme. She was ecstatic about that. She told me about it all the time. So I guess, looking at this aspect of her life, that she'd be, she'd ask the students to really develop a focus and exercise and unswerving devotion to that focus and that goal. And hopefully that the students will be able to get that. Her third, I think, very, most significant attribute or characteristic was her graciousness. And all the time that all the bad things that Peach talked about that we did, she never raised her voice once, but you always knew what she was thinking. She was a perfect hostess. I think probably the most fun she had in her life was in Norfolk when Carl was in NATO. And she made a lot of international friends, of which all of them have been calling here in the last 6 months. And I think she really enjoyed that. You could see and feel the graciousness in her artwork. Very detailed, very gracious, very poised artwork. She loved her flowers and plants. She'd go out and buy zillion. I don't know where she got them. And she'd load up her trunk and it was full of dirt. I think she planted them in the trunk and I had to go unplant them and plant them out in the yard. But she loved her flowers and plants. Every duty station that Carl went to, she always volunteered for the medical clinic, or volunteered as a gray lady. A year ago, she decided she wanted to volunteer for the medical clinic at the Air Force Base. And she went there for 1 day and she quit. I said, Mom, why'd you quit? She said, they were going to fire me. I said, why were they going to fire you? She said, I was supposed to call people's names out so they could come into the back and nobody could hear me. Well, if you ever talked to her, she had a very, very low voice. And you just couldn't do it. She said, well, I'm just not going to do that. And then she was always a perfect lady. Every time I ever saw her, she was always a perfect lady. And I think from that aspect, she would ask the students at Pinewood to really be inspired by the beauty in the plants and the flowers and the artwork in the garden, and they allow that inspiration to be used for the continued defense of freedom. That would be her, I believe her wish. And I think about her life, the value she gave me, the gracious way she carried herself for 86 years, her patriotism, her love of country, her ability to persevere through adversity, her adventuresome spirit and competitiveness, and her quiet tenacity. She was a true steel magnolia. And on June the 9th, she passed away into the hands of God with the same graciousness she lived. And Liberty Gardens will allow her to continue to inspire and teach future generations. Thank you. Now, let's ask Randy Calvin Gala to propose the toast.
I don't need the microphone. I'm ill-equipped to be here. In all seriousness, people who know me know I love an audience. I feel so out of my depth with the people I'm surrounded by. I want to make a toast. That toast would be to Fran, the greatest generation, and freedom. Please raise your glasses.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.